all for coming tonight to see Lee Upton Reading. I'm Dr. Watson. I teach fiction in the MFA program here. And this morning when I picked Lee up, I told her that our students were amazing. And she knew that already. Of course, she's been a teacher for a long time and she'd read their work. I said, there's just something special about this place. And when we bring a visiting writer in, they do a lot of different things. They do a reading like this. They do a craft talk, which we had earlier today. But one of the most important things they do is meet with the students and look at their work and talk to them and guide them. And she had the chance to do that with 6 of our fiction students this morning, and we'll do so again tomorrow morning with the other 6. And this afternoon, she said, yeah, you're right. There's something really interesting happening here. And I think the word individualism kept coming up. That all the writing really showed variation, showed people's real personalities in there. She noted that unlike many programs, we weren't trying to crank out writers that all sound like us. We're embracing the individualism, and that's just sort of stuck with me all day. I wanted to read 2 little things. The first from this fabulous book that I think we'll hear a lot of tonight. There's this line that I couldn't stop going back to when I read the book. You can find the little pockets in a life, and in those pockets are the silly, happy things that make people who they are. And so I welcome you all into this special little pocket here that they have managed to carve out at McNeese. Today marks the end of my 5th week of my 2nd year, so I still feel just stunned and overwhelmed that I'm able to do this and that I'm able to do cool things like bring Lee Upton here. It's just been an absolute fortune, and I'm really glad that Lee sort of gets to experience that. I wanted to thank here Dr. Costello and Dr. Lejeune for all their support of the English department. This reading is sponsored by the Julia Hartner Grant Endowed Professorship. And thank you to the MFA program for letting me do cool things like this. I'm going to read one more little snippet and a biography of Lee, and then I'm going to turn over the floor. In this fantastic book with the narrator Tabitha, well, you'll hear Tabitha's voice in a minute, but Tabitha says, I may not stay long, and you will never get enough of me. And that is how I feel about Tabitha, and that is how I feel about Lee Upton. She will only be here for a very short time. We won't get enough of her, but we will really enjoy what we get here. Lee is an American poet, fiction writer, and literary critic. She earned a BA in journalism at Michigan State University, a Master of Fine Arts at the University of Massachusetts Amherst Program for Poets and Writers, and a PhD in English Literature at the State University of New York at Binghamton. She's the author of several books of poetry, fiction, and literary criticism. Lee is a former professor of English and writer-in-residence at Lafayette College in Easton, Pennsylvania. Her work has appeared in The New Yorker, The Atlantic, The New Republic, American Poetry Review, Harvard Review, and Doubletake. She's won the 2008 Miami University Press Novella Prize Award, the Lyric Poetry Award, the Writer Magazine Emily Dickinson Award, and 1988 National Poetry Series. Welcome, Lee Upton.
Thank you all. Thank you for coming. I'm just delighted. I've had such a wonderful time with everyone. As Lynn said, and Lynn, thank you for that gorgeous introduction. The independence of the writers that I've met here in the program is very much to the foreground, in the sense that each has a kind of embodied voice. So I am just so pleased to be with you. I want to thank Lynn, of course, Mike, Michael, Kevin, all the faculty who've been so kind and welcoming to me, and the students for letting me be a writer among you writers and to see your work at this point in your lives. And I hope, I'm building some friendships here. And thank you also for reading my work. I'll tell you a bit about the novel. It's called Tabitha, Get Up. And the form of it is in Tabitha, the narrator's notes to herself and her recapitulating for herself various scenes that are important to her. Tabitha is a biographer who has been a failure in some ways. She cannot afford to pay her rent. She has lost her self-respect, but a miracle has happened in the tiny town where she lives. One summer, two celebrities are living in the town, and she decides, despite all the odds, that she's going to write biographies about both of them. One of the celebrities is an actor so charismatic, so famous that his face is on the side of buses. And the other celebrity is a children's book author who is also an author of erotica with a fanatical cult following. So what I'm going to do is just mention very briefly the characters that you'll meet, although it may be very clear from context. Again, this is through Tabitha's sensibility, her notes to herself. Leon, her very treasured nephew, who is actually a year older than she is. Rosamund, her publisher. And then there's, of course, the actor Brent Vintner, and the children's book author and also the author of erotic novels, Piper Fields. So I will simply plunge ahead and read a few portions from the novel for you. This is Tabitha and Tabitha's voice. I was taking notes, little things that struck me, notes to myself, all of which require immense concentration. And that might have been why I startled when the woman's voice broke my focus. In the bar, there's a jukebox and an old mini grand piano that my nephew got for free by taking off someone's hands. And that woman was wriggling atop the piano and growling. I mean, sort of singing and wriggling atop that piano. Why don't you ever see men doing that? From a rounded booth near a partition, chortles emanated. That's not a word, chortles, I've ever before used, but there were nothing less than chortles, these enraging sounds, those deep in the throat sounds, huffing, choking laughs, aggressive. The people laughing, it sounded like a group of maybe 3 men, were enjoying the woman's humiliation, for there she was, winding herself around like a python in a parody of frustrated sexual desire, which is something I actually know something about. Honestly, that woman reminded me of what it's like to wipe off a sticky table with a dish rag when you're ready to fall asleep. That was the way her bottom half was making the rounds on that old piano, while the song playing was like Frank Sinatra light, like someone was trying to be Frank Sinatra, but never had a bad day in his young, unblemished life. And to the sound of this lightweight ballad, the woman in her low-slung black dress was rear-end mopping the piano, which I knew for a fact hadn't been tuned in years. It is a terrible thing to see anyone humiliating themselves, especially another woman. As a gender, haven't we been embarrassed enough, made to see ourselves or others see us as others see us too often? We've been shamed forever. Seeing humiliation close up, it seems like overkill. The woman gyrating was one of those people who inflates her own sense of attractiveness. I love people like that. She was singing moaning words that I couldn't make out, and the chortles from the back booth grew louder and more guttural, and I couldn't help myself. I sprang up and marched to the chortlers. That woman, I said, pointing to the woman on the piano who was ignoring me, her eyes closed. So involved was she in the activity of sponging around on the piano. I said, that woman is doing something none of you have the guts to do. She's enjoying the music. She's moving herself around to enjoy the music. I turned to make sure she wasn't paying attention. I know it looks like she's crying for attention, and she is, but she's a human being with a human soul, and she doesn't deserve to be laughed at. Look at you, just look at you. I wanted to insult them because it felt good to be enraged and virtuous, and then I looked at them. The one nearest me, shading his eyes as if staring into the sun, was beautiful, more than beautiful, an oasis to anyone dying of thirst. I could only see his chin and the really sweet tips of his ears, but I knew beauty. And then he pulled his hand away from his face. I heard the rush of wings behind me. It was the piano woman, her dress swishing, wedging herself right up next to me. She leaned over toward a bald, dark-eyed man and kissed him and said, "Darling, how'd you like it?" And the man she kissed said, "You're adorable." He looked at me, glowering. The woman turned. "And you are," she said. Message to publisher. "Dear Rosamond, you know how you wanted me to work only on the children's author, Piper Fields, to gain her trust and convince her to allow me to be her biographer? Or should I say, I myself wanted her to realize how lucky she'd be if I were her biographer? Well, shove that possibility aside, because by lucky accident, I met Brett Vintner in the most casual and friendly way in, of all places, my nephew's bar. Brent Vintner was there with some of his friends, movie types here in Midlothian, shooting movie lingo, and he insisted that I join him at the table with his friends, and then proceeded to feed me like I was a wee bird, French fries. A funny thing, the woman who was at Brent Vintner's booth had been doing a bit of improv on top of my nephew's piano, wriggling upon the broken down instrument like she was destroying enemies. I didn't even realize who she was. I've seen her in at least 3 movies. My God, in real life, she looks completely different. You know how the features of beautiful, famous people are often a little off, too large or too small for their heads, maybe allowing them to fluidly express emotion by moving parts of their face around? Not that my features aren't more than a little off, but good God, it just shows, what kind of fantasy world we all live in. She does not look like herself, is all I'm saying. But Brent Vintner, this is the miracle, the stupefying fact. He looks better than he looks on screen. Rosamond, aren't you glad you're going to send me another advance on the advance? Because in this tiny town, coincidentally, 2 people I'm going to immortalize are here for possibly months and already will become deeply invested in my well-being. It may not seem like work what I'm doing, but believe me, it's like my nervous system is being power washed. Note to self, am I going too far with this made-up scenario, as if Brent Vintner would ever feed a middle-aged woman French fries? But he did put his hand to his mouth in the universal sign that means stop talking. When Ada whipped over to the table, her hair and her eyes, her tiny cat body already drooping as she slid into the booth with the men, laughing, delighted by herself, gulping herself down. Humiliation. I had been embarrassed for AF before I knew she was AF, and when I thought she needed me and that I was her warrior, I slunk away after she came to the table. It is humiliating to act righteous when no one is doing anything wrong. It smacks of the Inquisition. Another part I'm going to read, after some crises, Tabitha's nephew, who owns the bar and is a very kind fellow, he wants to do something nice for her. Take this, my nephew Leon insists. He's in my apartment, propped against the refrigerator. I flip open the booklet. These are massage coupons, and they're all 7 years old. I called, and they're still honoring them. The coupons are inscribed, "Happy Fingers." Under 4 hands are 2 slogans, "Unwind from the grind" and "Go and glow." I ask, does this mean you think I need to relax more? You do need to relax more, at least take one. Okay, one. That coupon covers full price and includes a tip, Leon says. Don't let them squeeze you dry. When are you going? This isn't one of those places that exploits women. There's certified massage therapist, Tabitha. It's entirely therapeutic. I've never even gone. How do you know then? Word gets around. Ask for Gwyneth. I don't usually do things immediately, believing as I do in the ultimate value of procrastination, but I'm trying to change my life so that I can be more helpful to others and more stable and less prone to making my nephew Leon worry. Therefore, I immediately arrange an appointment and drive to the outlet mall on the south side of Midlothian. A massage must be valuable. It's possible to imagine one's body rebalanced and restored. A stranger's hands palpitating my body, something about that makes me queasy, admittedly, but massage is an ancient and highly developed practice, even spiritual. Do you have anyone to drive you home afterwards? The woman at the reception desk asks. She is wearing a long white coat, like a physician. Her lower teeth resemble the opera singer Pavarotti's, like those of certain small dogs. I came alone. Well then, you'll have to wait at least a half hour after your massage before you're capable of driving. Not to sound like we're giving you a colonoscopy or anything. Crisply, she hands me a pen and a paper form to fill out. Minutes later, my name is called by a short, officious-looking woman who appears incredibly clean, even polished. She escorts me to a dimly lit room, hands me a robe, instructs me to undress. Before I can undress the woman, she is by all evidence the masseuse and has a sorrowful face, looks me up and down in almost a proprietary way. You know, you have this cute little tummy. She bats at my stomach. That could come off. We could freeze it next door. They have the equipment. You'd look so much better. I don't want to look better. I only came for the massage. I just want to relax. If you don't care about how you look, you must already be relaxed. Maybe I'm relaxed and don't know it because I'm so anxious. Please be sure to take off your glasses. I don't want to get them all smudgy-mudgy. I'm going to be using our special lavender and violet lotion, okay? You'll notice a slightly warm, tingling sensation. She leaves while I undress. When she returns, her timing is uncanny, like she's been peeking through a hole in the wall. Oh, like this, sweetie, she says. You have to lie down on your stomach. She adjusts my head until it fits in the opening on the table. A funny thing, without my glasses, I lose not only most of my sight, but my sense of smell. She could rub me down with Crisco straight out of the can and I wouldn't know it. I feel pelt-like stretched on the table and horribly shy. She pushes my head back into the hole. This is all done with the authority of an executioner before the guillotine blade drops. She thrusts an elbow into my back. I can tell you're all knotted up. Toxicity, fear. She presses her other elbow deep into my left shoulder blade. I visualize chicken bones dropped into a dumpster after a Keep your head in place, she says. What are you afraid of? Nothing can harm you here. Your fears are being pushed out through your rib cage, out through the massage table, out to the floor, and from the floor, down, 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 into the big old belly of the earth. Yes, your fears are being pushed right down and out. Your fear that your love will never be returned, that you'll only be able to communicate by moving your eyelids. Your fear that you'll be strapped to a goat and sent to wander in the desert. Those fears have to go. Go now. You have a right to be here, to be in the universe. You are stardust. Oh dear, there's so much old meat on you. We'll loosen you up right quick. Here's your spine, like a long line of beads, or like a long train track. And where's the train? Oh, the train skipped the tracks. Late that afternoon, Leon calls. How was it? Great, I hope. I answer him. Tabitha, I can't make out a word you're saying. You haven't lost your voice again. I'm able to say no and call back in hour. He calls back almost on the dot. Tabitha, sorry, I'm still blubbery. That massage, I never want another one as long as I live. That one can last for the rest of my life. Leon, you didn't warn me. Tabitha, sue them if they hurt you. I'm not hurt. It's like the person working on me liquidated my muscles. That's a good thing, right? I couldn't stand up for nearly an hour. When I finally managed to walk out to my car, I couldn't feel my hands on the steering wheel. I was treated like a piece of raw beef that had to be tenderized with a hammer. And then I was treated like I was something that had to be poured into a loaf pan, and last bits of dough were sticking to the side of the mixing bowl. Then she did this weird dusting thing with a feather, a purifying ritual, and I felt so dirty. The next section I'll read is a bookstore haunting. The author the author Piper Fields her books come out, each in the same year, her children's book and her book of erotica. And she hires Tabitha as a kind of bouncer for both events. And I'll read you the signing for the children. It's a bookstore haunting. A child throws down a stuffed animal on the signing table. Oh, a bunny. It looks positively maimed, though, very floppy. Apparently its inside sucked out. I managed to move closer to get a better look. A few of the other children are holding similar stuffed animals. I realize, of course, there's a product tie-in with Piper's children's books. I should have known. You can speculate about what those children are going to be like as adults by the way they treat those bunnies. One little boy is cuddle kissing his, while another bangs the bunny's head against a rack of Legos. I'm supposed to be protecting Piper Fields, but in this crowd, I'm spending a lot of time looking down. Such short children, a sensation of wetness. A toddler is sucking on the hem of my dress. Inches from me in line stands a woman in a dress as pink as a little girl's. I tap the woman's shoulder. Your little girl is here, I say, pointing down at the toddler. That's not my child, the woman says, glaring like I'm trying to pawn off this sweet little girl barnacled to my dress. I begin to sweat and look around, guilty already. Once in Walmart, I witnessed a child wandering and crying. I hurried up to her and said, "Sweetie, are you lost?" As if summoned by horn, the child's father barreled from behind a carousel of coats and shouted, "Get away from her!" I was only saved from arrest because I've known one of the store clerks since grade school, and she vouched that children don't even like me. Is this anyone's child? I asked the air, attempting not to be too loud, too disruptive, imagining that the parent can't be far away. A flutter of interest, much pulling of children closer. The little girl gumming my chest isn't looking up. She'll scream when she sees I'm not her mother. From my vantage point, the child's right foot is visible in part of her left, tiny white sneakers with butterflies. Surely someone loves her. I just have to wait. At last, a man in a faded chapstick t-shirt turns away from the signing table where he's been leaning closer to Piper Fields than a dentist and duck walks toward me. He strips the little girl's hands from my dress, hoists her and says, "What you been up to, monkey?" The woman I thought was the child's mother pivots to say, "You shouldn't talk to her like that." "He's not talking to me," I say. "I don't even know him." I look up at the man. "Do I know you?" He ignores me masterfully before he says to his little girl, "Do we know her, monkey? Do we? Who wants a cupcake?" "Monkey wants a cupcake." He's holding not only the child I see now, but his other hand dangling, clutches a copy of Piper Fields' newest children's book, Bunny Carnival, and there it is, poking from under the bunny book, a thicker book. Piper's name is on the spine. It's obviously her new erotic novel. He's a crossover dad, getting double duty on an occasion. Sudden suspicion. Did that dad force a toddler to grip my dress like I'm an old hitching post. And the next section I'll read to you is Unexpected Visit. One of the joys of writing the novel was writing Tabitha's mother and the mother's voice. But this starts out with Tabitha's voice. Sometimes, you just need to check in on yourself because otherwise what? I've had this lingering sensation before and have been able to wait it out, I just typed, as if anyone is listening. And maybe that's the problem. Who would listen? I don't even know what's wrong, except that there's a kind of loneliness I'm overly familiar with, and it threatens to become a howling meteor that's miniaturized enough for me to swallow it. And now it's inside my throat and growing, and soon there won't be an inside of me. No, the meteor will come rushing out because I'll be a bubbling ball of space gas. Does that make sense? I don't know how to explain it any better, the sensation that I don't quite have skin. Years ago, that feeling manifested in a whole other way. Back then, I always felt I was behind an enormous glass panel. I tried to explain it to myself. It's because you're wearing eyeglasses, Tabitha. And then I felt better. Using my own name made me feel better, as if I wasn't alone. Why should I believe that sadness, which afflicts so many, can pull me under again? Sadness has no independent existence. Sadness is not a swamp monster patrolling, yet sadness must poke from inside me to be recognized by me, like that old movie Alien. Sadness eggs were implanted long ago, and I have been warming them for appropriate moment. Self-fertilized eggs. And am I experiencing an apparition? It's my mother standing inside my apartment, and she's speaking to me. She says, Tabitha, I saw you on the sidewalk yesterday, and you look so strange, like a wolf. At any rate, I think I know what you need. My mother hands me coffee, very hot, encased in a steel cylinder. Here you go, she says. Don't expect this treatment ever again, Tabitha. Mother's intuition. Sometimes we all need a little help. Tabitha, you have to wipe that dead look off your face. Look, I brought you an entire bag of coffee beans, too, unground. It says here on the bag that this coffee has afternotes that taste like cherries and chocolate and caramel and citrus. Too bad. I know you're like me on one count. You just want to taste coffee in your coffee. I'm so glad you're here. I'm really, really glad. Speak up. You sound like you're stuck in a tin can. My mother won't sit down when I point to the couch. Tabitha, I remember like it was yesterday, the day you were born. Before I could even see your face, the nurse whisked you away to clean you up because you got yourself all gunky. Then they brought you to me, and you were wrapped in a blanket, this teeny tiny newborn, and I looked into your face, and my first thought was, who is this little old woman? I knew from the start that it was unlikely we'd have much in common. But remember, I'm your mother. I've never once forgotten that. Even though you came 20 years after your brother, who made me a mother by being born, you are not at all like your brother, I'll say that. When's the last time you heard from him? Not long ago, not really. His wife, what's her name? Gaia. They both care so much about you. Gaia sends you those self-help books, Tabitha, and you need self-help books. I want to choose my own books. Those books, what was that one that bothered you so much? Aging Gracefully. I don't know why, Tabitha. I don't know why your mother and brother married such a doll to Aging Gracefully, Tabitha. Grace has nothing to do with it. You should listen to me, not read some antiquated book. I'm so grateful to see my mother, someone who's always known me and even has a gift for me, coffee, that I'm ready to weep. Leon will laugh when I tell him about a visit and say, why should it matter so much that my own mother does something unexpected, appearing in person when she knows I'm in distress and bringing me coffee? Even at my age, I need her. I'll need her even after I'm dead. I miss her while she's standing right in front of me. It makes perfect sense that my mother is adept at upholstering. She takes shapeless things, worn down by years, flattened and slumping, and builds them back up by aggressively stuffing them and then sitting on them and applying her weight. This is not a small talent. Don't expect this again, my mother warns as she moves to the door. You're stronger than you look. Remember, there's a good likelihood we're related to members of the Donner Party, which tells you a lot about the survival instincts you inherited from my side of the family. Already, I can feel it, my throat coming unstuck. I go out on the balcony and look down and watch a squirrel eating the very last tulip, a lingering holdover. And when I see that the squirrel has one red petal stuck to its little foot, it looks marvelous, like the squirrel is wearing a tiny velvet slipper fit for a prince. And I'll end with this section called Biting the Bullet. Throughout the novel, Tabitha has had a very hard time looking at the actor because he's so beautiful. It's very shy making. And she finally tells herself she's really got to watch an entire movie with him in it. Usually she can't even watch his movies. So she's going to see him on screen. It is past time, in fact, way past time, for me to watch an entire movie with Brent Bittner in it. I choose Bachelors on the Pickup Bus. The premise is simple. The wheels fall off the bus when the occupants, men seeking love of any sort with women, with other men, etc., discover that touring by bus to find mates isn't an efficient, or successful means of fulfilling their desires. Brent Bittner plays the best friend of the bus operator who started the business and drives the bus. To make Brent Bittner a best friend and not the lead, that is to turn down his attractiveness, he's given a mustache, a beard, and bangs. Thereby his beauty, his infernal and yet heavenly beauty, is partially obscured. They also give him a teacup pig, though, which makes him possibly even more attractive. Every time he answers the door when his buddy comes over, Brent Bittner is cuddling that teacup pig he rescued from a dealer who stunted the pig's growth. The movie wasn't a hit. Probably it did much better than it would have otherwise because of Brent Bittner cradling that teacup pig. The pig's name is Poison Dart, a misnomer that renders the pig even more adorable for the high contrast with its obliging nature. It's possible I learned to feel insane amounts of jealousy toward a pig. Brent Bittner's face behind that extraneous hair, I see it and manage not to look away, finding that I can move my eyes around his face in tight circles or turn my attention to his perfect ears, which are less communicative than his eyes and mouth. Then I turn my attention to the pig and replay a scene. The pig is trying to look up, which is hard for a pig because they have virtually no neck. The pig is raising its snout to look into Brent Bittner's eyes, and Brent Bittner is looking down at that pig with such tenderness. I know that look. I make myself watch the movie without having to tie my arms to a chair. I laugh often and generally enjoy myself. I'm glad Brent Bittner plays a pig rescuer. Is it possible that Brent Bittner will ever think he's rescuing me? Or could I myself ever rescue Brent Bittner from a future life of emptiness, triviality, and superficiality? I can supply all three. It occurs to me that any other person watching this romantic comedy would call it a guilty pleasure. People call guilty pleasures such things as reading a romance novel or watching a detective movie or eating corn chips off somebody's stomach. Much more interesting, shameful pleasures. I go to the refrigerator and eat a couple of pats of butter for the absolute joy of it. Thank you so much. I was told that there could be, thank you so much. I was told that there could be questions if you have any. And thank you, so many of you had wonderful questions earlier in the day.
You said that how much you enjoyed writing with the mother's voice, and I was wondering if you'd ever considered writing sort of in the first person through a voice like that is very cynical and kind of painful.
I think that, I think a voice can compel a novel if it has a lot of energy. And so it might be fun to work that way, but I think a part of me might start weeping because I think, oh, this terrible woman, and I have to, you have to, it takes a long time to write anything. And so, I'd be spending a lot of time with someone that, like they always say, if you have, I've heard multiple people say this, if you have a kind of unlikable character, that's terrific. All that matters really is that there's energy and that you're discovering something. And then people always say, give the person some characteristics, give the person a dog or a cat or a parakeet they can be kind to or whatever. And of course, everyone is the hero of their own life, and every villain has their own reasons for doing what they're doing. But I tell you, when I would, the mother says a lot of terrible things just through voicemail, but it was always felt good to get out of the mother's voice too, and to go, give myself a break with another sensibility. Thanks for that question.
Okay, follow up to that. My own mother went to Michigan State, go Spartans, but totally separate from that character. I just want to bring it up as a alum. But the follow-up was, so that character has this amazing characteristic where she's a mother who talks about her daughter's mortality and thinks she's going to outlive her daughter, which is such a strange thing for a mother to be constantly commenting on. But when you develop characters, is it a conscious process, or how do you develop something like that?
I thought so often, older women, the mother is almost 90 years old. I had to really work out, like, her age of having a child, 20 years apart, and with a child this age. So she's almost 90 years old. And I really liked to create a character who isn't like the character one often sees in movies at that age. There's a kind of, sweetness stereotype, whereas some of the women I've known who are, of advanced age are very strong to live to that age. And so I liked the idea of giving this woman, there's another character also who's about roughly the same age as the mother, and they're both formidable. At one point, Timothy appears, about putting them together in a room, what they would do to one another. I do have the sequel to this, Tabitha, Stay Up, and both of the older women are in this. So it was really kind of refreshing, working against stereotypes in some ways, and also working with the kind of romantic comedy tropes, but then contorting them a bit, because the book is partly, I think, it plays a bit with philosophy about how to stay alive, because there's a point in the book where the character somehow has to renew herself. She's in danger of falling into a depression that she cannot get out of, and so she tries various strategies to make herself feel better. And so I think in some ways the book is partly about loneliness, as I've mentioned to some of you earlier, but also a kind of renewable sense of optimism and belief in the world, despite how many times this character has been knocked down. Yes.
Did you have any favorite scenes that ultimately didn't make the cut for the novel, and how did you come to the conclusion that it wasn't quite
That it wasn't what?
quite a fit for the novel?
Oh, well, actually, when I think about the process, I don't know if it's the same for all of you in here, like, you do it and you redo it and you worked with it enough, but this, as I mentioned, this novel came much more easily than probably anything I've ever written, because of the voice. I liked her voice so much. Once I caught the rhythm of it, at the very beginning, sentences, I know every woman looks better after a divorce. that line kind of catches the rhythm and it catches the kind of counterfactual belief. What I did is I wrote a draft of this, thought it was finished, and then I missed the voice, and so I wrote one sequel. Then I wrote another sequel. And then what I did after those sequels was I decided, oh, I'm going to cannibalize those sequels. And so I looked into those sequels and found what I liked and then stuffed them in those portions to give more multidimensionality to the character. And but one of those sequels, then when I just, at first I wasn't going to write, after a while I said, I cannot mess with her life anymore. You know, why do anything to Tabitha? Because the sequel inevitably changes the person's life and there has to be some tension, some new conflict. Why disturb her? Because I liked her, what happens to her at the end of the novel, not to give too much away. But then missing her voice so much, I took out the old sequels that saw what was still there that hadn't been stripped away and figured out that there was something, there's a hint in the original of something unfulfilled for the character. I've talked about this before, kind of I call it breathing in the labyrinth. You go through your drafts and often it's early in the draft, there's something there that is going to tell you what you're missing. So sometimes when you're stopped dead by a project, go back to the beginning. I could have just listened to it as if another person were talking to you, or you kind of listen for the breathing of something that's alive. And when I go back and look at Tabitha in the form that has been published, in the form that it was accepted, after it was accepted, then I thought, do I dare? And then, you know, I wrote the sequel and changed it and realized what is unfulfilled. A character is, you know, I've used this description before, but how characters kind of like a donut. There's a hole in the center. There's always something missing or a wound. And not too long ago, I was looking at pictures of donuts for a PowerPoint, and I found a donut with a bite in it. I thought, oh, that's better than I thought of, because not only does the character have a hole, something's missing in the character, but someone recently has bit into that character in order for there to be a change. So I had to let something bite into her. Because of my own selfish pleasure in playing with that voice again. Yeah. Thank you for that question. If there are no more questions, it looks, oh, there's another question.
It's a silly question. I pictured the woman on the piano, as you so richly described, as being barefoot, but the cover has her in orange high heels.
Yeah, that, the cover is by Emery Hantho, and I remember when they showed me the cover, I was so surprised. It's like a cover, I loved it. It's from the 40s, sort of pulpy, but my character would never wear those shoes, those heels, but I called them before her fantasy heels, perhaps. Yeah, so, but I don't know if, maybe it was more from my generation, but there are so many movies or TV shows where a woman gets up on a piano, and I remember being a little girl and thinking that would be the coolest thing, to sit on a piano and just sing somehow. And then there's that wonderful, the Fabulous Baker Boys movie with the wonderful actress on the piano singing. It's gorgeous, gorgeous. So I think in a lot of ways, I drew up, memories of women on pianos. It was a kind of trope in so many movies and television shows as well too. So I'm having fun with it. So thank you for noticing her shoes. They have always been a topic of conversation, those shoes. Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you. Thank you, everyone. It looks like there's tea, there's wine, there's little packaged wonderful things. Thank you again, everyone here. I really loved being here, and I'm really grateful for all the kindness. So thank you.
So thank you all for coming out tonight. And there's some candy, there's some packaged sweets, a little wine, maybe not the best wine, sweet tea. The most exciting thing is Lee is like just getting rid of these books at $10 a pop. So that's half off. Amazon's going to send you an angry email. So you might want to snap them up while they have them. And I think for those that have books, you'll sit and sign some for a little bit. And again, thank you for coming. And we do have a reading on October 25th. Dilruba Ahmed, poet, will be reading at the same venue tentatively as we have. So, right. Thank you again.